Right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Those of you who are familiar with my series on the Ripper murders, Ripper's London, will already be aware of the second part of my introduction to this series about the murders committed by Jack the Ripper. And although I admit that I don't have any idea who Jack the Ripper was, I can at least identify the neighbourhood in which he lived. So, first of all, you have to discard all the other really silly suggestions that have been put forward, like the Duke of Clarence, or Sir William Gull, or Walter Sickert, or even Lewis Carroll, Oscar Wilde, Vincent van Gogh, Mohandas Gandhi. Anyway, let's put all that aside. And we have to deal with the evidence that we have. And in my previous video, I really looked at the murder sites. Now, some years ago, there was a view circulating among some Ripper researchers on this subject to the effect that the murder sites formed a pentagram, if you trace them out. And a pentagram is a black magic symbol. I don't believe that. I think that is quite obvious nonsense. And so what I intended to do was to mark out the various murder sites on the map, and rather than being a pentagram, they formed something very close to a parallelogram, if it were a four-sided figure, if it could omit the murder of Mary Jane Kelly. Now, in the centre of that geometrical figure, I drew a line from the site of the murder of Annie Chapman to Liz Stride, who's down here, and then I crossed over with another line leading from the murder of Catherine Eddowes up to the murder of Mary Ann Nichols. And I say they cross at a given point, which is just off the Whitechapel High Street. Well, I don't think that Jack the Ripper actually lived on that exact spot. At that time, I thought that Jack the Ripper lived somewhere in the vicinity of this crossroads here, which is the crossroads of Wentworth Street, Old Montague Street, Brick Lane and Osborn Street. We know that after the murder of Catherine Eddowes, Jack the Ripper took this course. He either went through these streets or possibly went Aldgate, but I think that's exposing himself. I think he took the back streets. He didn't go south, he didn't go west, he didn't go north. He went northeast, and I think obviously he was intending to go home. And at that time, as he went past Wentworth model dwellings, he threw aside a piece of the petticoat that he had torn or cut from the body of Catherine Eddowes. Just threw it in a doorway. Didn't have to worry about blood groups, fingerprints or anything like that. They didn't know anything about that sort of stuff in 1888. And then after that, he turned to the right to make his way up Wentworth Street. Well, I could be wrong on that one. And as I've started to rethink my position, it is possible that he took this road up Bell Lane, so I'm not going to be dogmatic. Now, way back in the year 2006, a certain Dr. Kim Rossmo, who was a criminologist working at the University of Texas, produced a mathematical formula to reveal the location of serial murders in relation to the places where they commit their murders. And he argued that serial murderers prefer to commit the crime in places where they're unlikely to be recognised, but obviously don't want to travel too far out of their personal comfort zone. And so he is really now the leader of what is called geoprofiling. When the Metropolitan Police applied this formula to the murders of Jack the Ripper, they came to the conclusion that Jack the Ripper lived in Flower and Dean Street. This is somewhere up here. If he didn't actually live in Flower and Dean Street, he may have lived in Fashion Street or in Thrawl Street or somewhere in this general area. But Flower and Dean Street was the centre. Now, as I say, in the course of making these videos, I've turned my attention not only to the places where the murders took place, but the locations where the victims lived during the summer of 1888. And for that purpose, I have found out that Martha Tabram lived here in number 18 George Street, that after her murder, Mary Ann Nichols lived at number 18 Thrawl Street. She, of course, was murdered up here in Bucks Row, and Martha Tabram was murdered in George Yard Buildings, not far away. I don't think that Jack the Ripper wanted to commit the murder too close to home, so after Martha Tabram, he committed the next murder of Mary Ann Nichols in Bucks Row. After that, the next murder was that of Annie Chapman in Hanbury Street, number 29. She was murdered in the backyard of that house, and then nothing else happened. That was the Saturday the 8th of September. Nothing else happened in September until the very last day, when we had the murder of, we had two murders in the same night. We had the murder of Liz Stride at 1 o'clock on the 30th of September, and that was here. And then after Liz Stride, that murder was frustrated by the arrival of a man on a pony and cart. So Jack the Ripper ran off back to Aldgate, went to the church, St Botolph's Church, picked up Catherine Eddowes and took her to Mitre Square, or she took him to Mitre Square, and that's where he murdered her here. And then after that, that was the 30th of September. On the morning of the 9th of November, we have the murder of Mary Jane Kelly in Miller's Court in Dorset Street. So that's up there. Now, I've spoken about Tabram and Nichols, and Chapman, Annie Chapman, she lived in Dorset Street in Crossingham's lodging house. After her, we have the murder of Stride and Eddowes. They both lived in Flower and Dean Street here. And of course, Mary Kelly lived in her own home. So what we are beginning to see is the development of a cluster of victims here. This is where they lived. And then I did some more research, and I found out there was another lady called Annie Milwood who lived at number 8 White's Row. That was really a brothel, if we're going to be perfectly frank. She admitted herself to the Whitechapel Infirmary in the 25th of February, complaining that a man had stabbed her in the legs and lower torso. Anyway, she was admitted to into the workshop infirmary up here, and she recovered from her wounds, but sad to say, she died about a month later of natural causes, so the coroner reckoned. After this, we also have the murder. Now, after the murder of Mary Kelly, this is, in the 17th of July, 1889, in Old Castle Street, we have the murder of Alice McKenzie. And Alice McKenzie lived in Gun Street here. Right, so I believe that the victims of Jack the Ripper lived in this cluster. And we can actually make a sequence here. We can say that the first victim, certainly attacked, was Annie Milwood here. And that was in February of 1888. After that, we have Martha Tabram, and she was attacked here in George Yard Buildings on the 7th of August, 1888. Then on the 31st of August, we have the murder of Mary Ann Nichols. After that, we have the murder of Annie Chapman on the 8th of September, and the murder of Liz Stride on the 30th of September, as well as Catherine Eddowes. Then we have the murder of Mary Kelly, and after that we have the murder of Alice McKenzie. We also have the name that comes up frequently of a lady called Frances Coles. She was murdered on the 13th of February 1891 in a place called Swallows Gardens, which you can't see on this map. It's off the map. But she lived at a place called Richard Street, which is just here, ladies and gentlemen. So because she lives there, and because she's not actually within that parallelogram, as it were, I should call it a pentagram, not actually a pentagon, a pentagram, a five-sided figure, I am inclined to discount the eligibility of Frances Coles to be a Ripper victim. So I just add that. I think with respect to Dr. Rossmer, I think it's just important to know where the victims lived as well as where they died. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is my own personal contribution to the advance of Jack the Ripper studies. And I only say that. No doubt many people are going to disagree with me. I know that's just one of the things about Jack the Ripper. It's very difficult to find two people who will actually agree on everything at one time. However, I'm putting that forward for your consideration, ladies and gentlemen, and I look forward to receiving your comments below. And if you like it, you can like my video, and if you dislike it, you're very welcome to dislike it. You can also subscribe if you want any more. But however, ladies and gentlemen, that is, I thought, something I should give you general information about my thoughts on Jack the Ripper. Come to it all again. Jack the Ripper lived somewhere in this postcode. That is how far my thoughts on this matter have developed. Other people may have other thoughts and may have good reasons for telling me why I'm wrong. I'd be interested to hear them. Anyway, from here I will move on to the next video, which will be about Annie Chapman.